I won't stand between you and Mr. Bose. It's up to Mr. Suman Bose. He will give a talk on leadership, on his life experiences, and some lessons for the younger kids who are joining for this year.
Thank you, Dr. Pandit, and thanks for having me here. Definitely, it's indeed a privilege, but I would say I'm more humbled than being privileged to be here. Well, I would actually turn it out and say, instead of me going and giving you a monologue, which may be interesting, may not be, I'm sure it will not be very interesting, because we all have ways of chalking our career paths ahead. I would actually want to make it very interactive, very, very interactive. So you can ask me any questions. I have the liberty of saying I don't know, which I think you will allow me. I have the liberty to say I guess this is it, what it is. Or I will say if I know about it, or if I think I know about it, I'll talk about it. But I definitely want this to be a session which is very interactive. The call for me to come in over here or get associated with an university like BML Munjal is primarily that it opens my mind. It allows me to think. Otherwise, we all get stereotyped in the work that we do, and very soon we start losing the reality. We start believing in the stories of success. And the reason I said stories because it's all at the end of the day perspective, where you stand. So that's the humbling feeling, and I want to feel elated with that feeling of feeling humbled. So please ensure that I really would request any questions that you would have, and I would like to talk about it. To give you a little background of myself, I've been associated and my current role of being the Managing Director and CEO of Siemens effectively was a kind of a change management role. It was brought in at a time when Siemens is an industrial engineering powerhouse. So Siemens decided that digitalization, as we speak, which effectively, I don't know how many of you understand what digitalization is vis-a-vis digitization. I want to be stopped and asked questions, and these are the points. So anybody can take a guess, what is the difference between digitization and digitalization? No one would hazard a guess? Come on, you can actually make mistakes. The colleges and universities are the best places to make those guesses and intelligent guesses and make mistakes, because that's how we would learn. Digitization is when you take information or data rather, in whichever form, and you create a digitized version of it, a zeros and ones representation of a digitized version of it, and you hope that data will create information. And that's how we do, right? Your data becomes information. Now, what do we do with information? How do you use that information to ensure that you're effectively making changes, you're effectively driving decisions, and then go beyond the decisions to, for example, in the realms of, I've heard about things like big data, I've heard about things like machine learning, all of that stuff, and that's what information, when information becomes live, where the physical and the digital part sort of comes in together, that's the digitalized world. So the world of today's automotive, for example, is not just mechanical engineering. It's as much digitalized as much as it's mechanical. So I just give you an example. The way human cognitive brain thinks today, it's the form of digitalization. Machine learning is digitalization. Robotics is digitalization. Mechatronics is digitalization. And as we start moving into areas, I mean, how many of you would? Okay, let me ask you a question. How many of you have cell phones in this room? Why am I asking this question? All of you, right? How many of you, if you have left the home and you realize you're not carrying your cell phone, would go back and pick up your cell phone? Okay, how many of you would not? You still have a few brave ones. We will see you converted. Don't worry, because that's becoming as much. They say that you feel digitally naked. So today, if you don't have, you're not carrying your connected devices, you actually feel as if you're not wearing your clothes. Now that was not the case, which happened even maybe 10 years back, right? 10 years back, you pretty much could have not answered your phone. You had things like a voicemail at home, where people called up and left messages. And we have funny stories about how people used to leave voice messages. So it's just 10 years, right? Think about, let me give you another example. Okay, let me ask people who were born in my side of the decades. So somebody who is sitting in the front. What was a sign of a prosperous family in the 70s, 60s, and 70s? A family that was prosperous. Sorry? Having a telephone connection, a TV, a refrigerator, and then a car, and you definitely had a nice library, right? At home when you came in, and whether you read it or not, the books were there. And I had somebody who told me, no, I need books of same sizes. So somebody said, why don't you just go and get telephone directories and get it bound? They'll all be of same sizes. So these were the things, like music record, music system, a nice music system at home. I don't know about others. I can say that I haven't watched a TV for, I don't know how many months, maybe years, literally. I mean, I would have glanced at a TV at an airport, but I don't sit down anymore and watch TV, because whatever I want to do out of television happens to me. I possibly get more news coming out of my Twitter. I get to, if I need entertainment, I have it on my YouTube, or I have it on my cloud, and I have to just put it on my jack end. So that one device, think about that one device that has taken away your Encyclopedia Britannica away. No one looks at that. Company even has closed down, right? You just Google it, and that has become a verb. Googling is a verb. You listen to music on the cloud, and I was seeing a cartoon the other day where there was this nice cartoon of a young child and his parent, both sort of sitting on a meadow. It was quite cloudy, and the father was looking up and admiring and saying, "Do you know, son, what are clouds made out of?" And the son is actually on his device, and he says, "Yeah, made out of songs," because for him, that's where he gets his songs from, the cloud. So when you start looking at the lingo changes that is happening, for some it looks abrupt, but for most it doesn't. Because I will take you back maybe, and that has a big impact, and you'll realize why am I talking about it when I'm in a management class over here. It has an impact because when you say, let's go back a few decades. Let's go back to the middle of the 19th century. People were still struggling with the concept of modern manufacturing. And the inspiration of those concepts of modern manufacturing came in from very unrelated places. For example, the whole concept of putting in assembly lines came from butcher shops, and where Henry Ford went and studied the butcher shops and said, this makes sense, and he started putting it in. Ford Motor Company at one point of time actually owned mines, which from where the minerals came out, and it made steel, from steel to steel sheets into cars, into dealership networks. So the entire value chain, people talk about integrated manufacturing, integrated, and it was what, 50, 60, 70 years back. You had somebody like an Alfred Sloan. In fact, I would recommend, if there's one book, I normally don't recommend books, but if there's one book I would recommend everybody to read, especially students who are curious of understanding the concept of modern management, that would be Alfred Sloan's autobiography book. It's not really an autobiography, it's possibly most well-written, I would say, book on business management, which is called My Years with General Motors. And the gentleman, he ensured that the book was published only after everybody he talks about in that book physically died. That was his instruction to his trust and to his publisher, that till the last person who was mentioned in that book actually passed away, the book wouldn't be published. It's a wonderful book. You would understand many of the things and that you take it for granted, for example, on organizational development, on product development, on go-to-markets, were actually so much of an idea that got worked around with before it became a part of a theory. So what is theory? Theory is essentially practice. When you start looking at trends, you put it all together and you say, this is a theoretical construct. And then an university or a teaching edifice comes together, creates a structure around it, and that gives it what is called a certification. It gives you, the difference between, I say, the difference between being educated and not so educated is the difference between being a certified doctor and a quack. A quack can possibly also cure you of your diseases, but a certified professional is. So the certification comes in from schools like this, where you put in a construct around the theory and you say, this is the process if you follow, most probably you'll reach the destination. No guarantees, but most probably you will reach the destination. So I started my destination in the late 80s. Was professionally an engineer, trained to be an engineer. I did my electrical engineering from Roorkee. Accidentally stepped into the world of information technology, very accidentally. Never really thought that. I mean, if you told me that, what has been your career plan, I would say it's been a series of accidents. And I've taken a nice joyride on the series of accidents. I made the best out of what came out of the front. So one important message that I must give you is plans are great, but there's a saying that the best laid plans for an army evaporates when the first bullet gets fired. Because after that, the most ready wins the war. It's not the strategy. Your enemy doesn't read your strategy book and say, oh, I'm supposed to attack this company or this country in this particular way. They don't do it that way. So strategies are great, plans are great, but then life is nothing but a series of accidents. And I'm sure many of you would relate to it. Some of you are possibly a little too young to relate to it, but you will soon realize that there is something called that you will look up and you say, maybe there was a grace that helped you through. So stepped into it, and like most of my genre at that point of time, there was nothing really happening in the country. We had a Hindu growth rate of 3%, which was exactly equal to our population growth rate. So effectively, it was all disguised unemployment. I remember I was working in a I won't name, fairly known large private sector company, and one of my customers said, "Well, you're just wasting your time. Why don't you come back next day?" He actually gave me a form to apply for a government job, and because that was the best jobs. The best jobs were government jobs, and my father went in for a government job. I'm sure a lot of you went in for your government jobs, and that was what the country was made out of. That was what dreams were made out of. Went out of the country. That was the in thing to do. Went out of the country. Got pulled back because I had a death in my family. Lost my father pretty early, so I had to come back. And as I said, life is a series of accidents. So I begrudgingly went and said, okay, maybe I should go back and do some more education. So I went back to my first post. I have achieved two. One, that's my first postgraduate, that was SRI, which Panda spoke about. And so when we went to graduate school, the in thing was to look at everything, and we all were engineers, right? Everything that was quantitative, anything that was qualitative was the next big time. From organizational development, organizational behavior, this is all like studying history. Everything that's maths, all quantitative analytics, all finance, subjects of finance, or the highest of the quantitative techniques, and you would get a high out of it. We have solved billions of dollars of transactions and mergers and acquisitions of a finance class, and we think we all know everything about finance. And then came into industry and realized today, if I had to go back, if I had a chance like you guys to go back, I would say I wouldn't lose this experience for the interaction that actually I learned, the interaction between people. What works finally is people make it happen. I would possibly pay more attention to understand how cultures get set, because I still believe that one single thing that differentiates a successful company versus a not so successful company is culture. There's a famous saying by Peter Drucker which says, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I think it's true. The second thing that I think happens in organization after so many years of my journey is organization has to be built for a purpose. Making money, or as finance tells you, the reason for an organization to exist is to increase shareholders' wealth. Doesn't create an organization. It just gives you a framework. You have to create a purpose. And organizations and people and families, even families, look at us. I mean, organization is no different from family, right? The family that stays together is a family that has purpose. It can't be, daily we have to wake up in the morning and we have to do our daily chores and we have to eat some food, and then that doesn't keep a family going. Family has purpose. So organizations has purpose. Universities have purpose. So that purpose is the second stuff. And so if culture and purpose go in together, the third is there are two very important people in the room. One is the employee, another is the customer. And both of them need maniacal, if not finicky, attitude and aptitude for taking care of If you don't take care of your employees, you can't take care of your customers. If you don't take care of your customers, there will be no employees. So those are the two, I would say, standing pillars that an organization gets built on. And then everything happens. Finance happens, and your quantitative analytics will happen, your mergers and acquisitions happen. Incidentally, I sit on today real life situations where we buy companies. And I can tell you, after the finance guys have left, all the discussion happens upon is that, can we make it happen? Will there be a synergy? Is there a confluence of culture? It is not about those spreadsheets that I thought when I was in school was the most important tool to look for. They are not really the most important tool to look for. And we have been both sides of mergers and acquisitions. We've been in where I have got acquired, and I felt bad. But then you sort of make your sun, make your hay when the sun shines. Or we are acquired and we felt great, but then nothing really changed. So it's a question of, I would say, balancing the emphasis of the customer and individuals in the organization. Stayed abroad, came back a little bit in the country. That was the time when liberalization, the first phase of liberalization was going through. We saw, for the first time, we saw the undoing of the bureaucracy. We saw liberalization of the red tapes, the entrepreneurships of a different nature. That was the time when the companies like Heroes really became hero. You had companies like Maruti which started defining what new age cars should be. And there were these wows in people's eyes that this would happen. Unleashing was happening. In all of that, a very confident nation started emerging. And I think that journey is still ongoing. I want to put that journey into a simple perspective. How many of you know that we are the youngest nation in the world? We are the youngest nation in the world, right? How many of you were born before 1970? We are such a big minority in this room. Expected, of course. But believe me, even in my gatherings in office, I would pretty much see the same. How many of you were born before 80s? Between 70s and 80s? Okay. Post 80, 80 and 90? Post 90? Post 2000s? That would have been child labor. So people, let me ask people who were born, anybody born, I'm sure there were a few who were born before 60s, in the 50s. No one in the 50s, okay, so between 50s and 60s, doesn't matter. For us, the luxury was, we learned something and then we applied. Typically, it was something in the area of application. And then few things happened, few things changed, and you sort of changed your vocation and you moved into something different. If you take the journey of a 30, 35 year, 40 years of work life of an average individual, the person normally would have had 1, 2, max 3 definitive change of career. Agree? Agree? Disagree? 1, 2, 3 is an outlier. 1 with mostly it was 1. Come 80s, the folks who were born in the 80s were possibly right in the heydays of their career growth at this point of time. I'm sure all of you, and if you're born in the 80s, you possibly have about 10 years of work ex, right? 10, 12 years of work ex. How many of you are working post-80s, born post-80s, have 10, 12 years of work ex? Can I have a hand up? How many professional changes have you had so far? He's the 4th. And he's a little bit of an outlier. So you typically would see about every 5 years, you would see a career change. If you're fortunate to be born post-90, and definitely post 2000, you will possibly have a career change every 2 years. The forecast is that the skills that you will learn today, 50% of them will be obsolete, not even dated, obsolete in 10 years, pretty much dated in 5 years. That means if you came out as of the school as an electrical engineer learning X amount of stuff, in 5 years, what you have learned won't give you a job. Basically, you won't even hire yourself, right? What does that mean? What does that mean for individuals like you who are sitting in this room as students of this August University? Can I have some answers, please? I'm talking also. Can I have a bottle of water? Any volunteers? Please. I'll give you a toffee if you give an answer. What does it mean? If every 2 years, sorry?
You're looking at continuous learning. Things are changing rapidly. So you need to update yourself. My previous organization, I was working with the London side. So right now, in my previous organization, I was working with the London side. So right now, with Brexit happening, I have to update myself with London legalities right now. So it's a good thing I'm not there right now.
Okay. And if Brexit hasn't happened, you would have been safe?
No.
Okay. Something else would have happened. So, thank you for. I mean, I owe you a toffee. Anybody else who believes who wants to give a? He said continuous learning. Anybody agrees? Everybody agrees? Nobody disagrees. Come on.
Very agreeable.
Sorry?
Very agreeable.
Very
Continuous
agreeable.
learning is the.
If figuratively I have my hand over here, full of some stuff, and you want to pour in something more, what will happen? It will spill over. So before you learn, you have to unlearn. And that's the baggage cleaning process. Most of us can't get out of our emotional baggages. Talk about your knowledge baggages. That unlearning is the toughest part. If you don't unlearn, and the older you get, it becomes more difficult to unlearn. The older you get, it gets more difficult to change your practice. You say, this is who I am, and I want to be who I am. But that's not what will take you across the river. What will take you across the river is this continuous refresh of first unlearning and then looking at word learning. So one of the hypotheses that I believe is going to become extremely true is the future is for the super generalists. If there is one thing that I want to take away from, again, an August University like this, is your ability to learn and unlearn, your ability to connect to people, your ability to see things in different perspectives and not get tied up to say, what I see is the truth. Because as you see day over here, somebody in this world at the same point of time is seeing a night. Right? So that's the perspective, the ability that there could be multiple points of view, and all of these points of view have to exist together. I'm very tempted to take it into a more socio-political discussion. I'm not. I'm going to stay back. But you will see forces which will start forcing you to start taking so-called, people will come and say, take a stand. For what? What will you take a stand for? What you have to take a stand for has to be worth it. So you can go back to, in the definition of an organization, go back to this whole paradigm. The organization has to have a culture. The culture has to be buried out of a purpose. Take a stand if you think the culture is detrimental to the organization. Take a stand. But don't take a stand because you felt your perspective was the right perspective. Yes, to execute, you will have to, at that point of time, take a decision. But you always have to have an open mind to go back and revisit your decision. So I think this is the biggest change of perspective that I would say has happened to the area of profession, and therefore the area of learning, management, all of that, is that you have to today learn with the mind. But in my time, what the first question somebody would ask is, what are you specializing in? My second alma mater where I went in was the first place in my, and I was quite old. In fact, I was already a father at that point of time, and I decided I wanted to take a break, and I took a break, and I went in for my second master's. was a place which allowed you to study essentially anything that you wanted. And it was one of these classes that I was sitting in this lecture hall of a very, very intelligent, eclectic professor. She happened to be a professor of psychiatry at the medical school, and a professor of change management in the business school, and a professor of computer science in the engineering school. Her whole theory was that as humans, and I'm just going to leave you with one set of thought, and then we should go into questions. As humans, we all have, like any other animals, we have our cycles of highs and lows, right? Our body's mechanism allows us to knows when we are euphoric and says, tone down, you're just too euphoric, come down, don't take a decision now, everything is looking blue and green. And that's a little bit of like what they say, there's a preponement of an alert that comes to our mind and sort of calms us down. And there are times when we're really low. But something tells us that there will be a silver lining. There will be a day tomorrow. Just go to sleep tonight. The world is not going to come to an end. And that sort of takes us from, it doesn't make us go completely into depression and takes us out. Now essentially this cycle has always existed. And so for example, if I'm depressed, what do? My body tells me, just get out of home. Go and meet some friends. Go out and have a drink. Or just do something. Go to a movie. Do something out. Don't stay in home. But what's happening today? Because it has deep implications on management, and I'll try 10. Technology, which is supposed to be all good and all great, has somewhat come in between and taken away, postponed that sense of disaster that's actually waiting for you. The real down that's happening to you, and you feel, no, I'm not lonely. See, I have this 500 guys on my Facebook. And 20 guys just gave me a thumbs up to some stupid comment that I made. Great comment that I made. Sorry, not stupid. And I have this 5 WhatsApp session going on, or whatever, Twitter session going on, Snapchats going on. I'm not lonely. So the body's mechanism of reacting to that sense of depression, or the sense of alarm, or the calamity that it's forcing in, it just goes wonky. So therefore, you will see more and more of people who are depressed. Suddenly, you will find this huge amount of depressive individuals standing up. And where were you all the time? What was your body doing? The body was being fooled because they thought you were always connected. Now, the reason I'm saying this is, I'm going to draw a parallel to today's organization. Today's organization is supposed to be always connected. You're always collaborative. You're always supposed to share. You're always... The definition of what is your own personal space in an organization. You come into office and the first thing you do, you think is your work is to answer all the emails. Answering emails has become a part of the work. So you dock in your machines, you look at the 300 emails, you read through some, you don't read through some, maybe I'm very finicky. I have to read all my emails, which I think is quite a task. But then, what does it do? How do I know? And I've seen that happen. An answer, somebody has given me an answer. I really don't understand what that person is saying. I just have to make a decision because I have that 15 seconds or that 30 seconds to make a decision on that email. Depending upon my mood at that point of time, how that person has written that particular email, I take a decision. Does it ensure that the stuff that I talked about, that the employees first, the customer first, does it always ensure that I hold that? The answer is no. Because the interaction that I'm standing over here and I'm talking to you, I'm seeing your faces, I see maybe somebody is totally switched off, I see somebody is tuning in, is giving me a feedback, and that feedback is real time. That feedback goes away. If there was a television that was standing over here and talking to you, or I was talking to a screen and I believe that there are some people out over there, it goes away. So when you get into and step into your organizations, don't become an email warrior. Don't take decisions looking at your spreadsheets. If there's one thing, and the final thing that I want to leave as a thought, is crossover. take that colleague out for a cup of coffee. Stand in near the water cooler and have that, even if it's a bad gossip, just have that gossip. Laugh at it. Don't take yourself very seriously. Don't forget that the best thing that's happening in the world at this point of time is that we are alive. And I have somebody next to me, or somebody in front of me that I'm interacting with. Don't go that, take that beyond and say, technology is going to come in and giving me all these kinds of connectivity and all this kind of social that is happening around me. That social is pretty much going to become antisocial. I'm not against any social networks. I'm not against any of this stuff. But I want you to feel real about your life. You are going to start your life in the next couple of years. Some of you have already started your life in your coming. Some of you will find a resonance of what I've spoken about. Some of you wouldn't have. You will live your own experience. I just thought it was a privilege for me to come in and share a part of my experience. And thank you for giving me an opportunity of doing that. If you have questions, I would be very happy to take a few questions.
So I have a set of questions that I need to ask Suman. So I'll request Suman to be chair.
No, I'll stand. Don't worry. I'll stand. I'm okay.
So these questions have been collected over last few weeks to ask these questions to you. You can have it.
No, I'm okay. Perfect. Okay.
So your first day at XLR.
Okay, so if anybody knows where XLR is, it's in Jamshedpur. And the only way to go, and we used to call that Jamport. The only way to go to Jamport was from Calcutta by a train, or from Ranchi. So I took a train from Calcutta. There was a derailment in the train. So the train, I landed up actually 24 hours late. And I forgot that there was a clause that the first day you have to be there, otherwise you're considered to be that you're not joining the course. So when I came in, I found that I was not even on the course. So that was my first sales job that I did. I convinced the director that he was really, they were Jesuit priest, that he was really a son of God, and that his grace would be very important for me to get a seat. So that was the first day was all about convincing that why it was hand of God, my train was late, and all of that happened. So that was my first day in XLRI.
The next question is about your journey as a student from XLRI to INSEAD to Harvard Business School at different points of time. So what were those key learning lessons that you got from these three schools during your lifetime?
XLRI, I learned camaraderie. I learned how, because it was a very small institution, it has always been kept like that. And that's the reason why I went to XLRI and I didn't go to some of the other bigger schools. It's about still. I mean, today, that's one. I think if you really talk about people standing up and trying to hold your hands out, I think that institute just marvels. It was a fascinating friendship that I took in out from. I think I learned something too, but I really forgot what I've learned. Harvard was challenging my limits. Because that was time when I was not hungry to, I need another education degree to do something good in my life, or do something in my life. I was learning for the sake of learning. So I went and challenged myself. I took courses which sounded crazy, but I just took them, and I ended up taking credits which were clashing. So I was lucky to find a couple of hours of sleep a night. There were terms where I haven't slept practically for 4 days, 5 days. Then they would crash out, come and crash for 4 hours or 5 hours, and that would be. So that was my lesson from Harvard. So again, the thing that in Harvard is the typical Indian paradigm of there is a teacher and there is me sort of disappears. It was all we were all professional colleagues. And I remember Professor Christensen coming to class and saying, he addressed the class as my junior colleagues, which was a great way to believe that, yeah, and that's what happens in the company. Today, if I have a colleague who's just joined in, who possibly was born after I graduated, I did my undergraduate, but he's a colleague of mine. He's not my kid. He's my colleague. So he's going to talk to me, he's going to give me his tantrums as a colleague. I can't patronize him. I can't become his father in the company. Or not, I want to be your lady, be his mother, you're a colleague. So that ability to appreciate that people across the age barrier, that 40 years of working life, or 50 years of working life, people have crossed the barrier, and we are now colleagues, we are now together on this intellectual journey. Another interesting thing was, very, very interesting, was that I remember the graph, and I should share that graph. I'm sort of drawing it over here, see if you can see it. So when you graduate, your knowledge is very high. Your theoretical constructs, your knowledge, your theories, your models are all up over there. And slowly, with time, sometimes too fast with time, it sort of starts falling off. It starts decaying because there are newer guys coming in, newer models, newer stuff. So it sort of falls in. So pretty much at a time, as we said, in 2 years, 4 years, you will be unemployed. You won't hire yourself for the knowledge that you've graduated with. But what keeps you employed is, if somebody talked about continuous learning, or I would say unlearning, is actually that learning is actually experience. So hopefully, before this sort of ebbs out, that you become literally unemployable, your experience has taken off, and that there is a sort of a curve influx that happens, and that experience goes out. And that experience allows you to do two things. One is experience allows you to, with a set of choices, make a choice quickly. And most importantly, actually, even more important than this, is to find someone who has the knowledge who you needed on your side. So find somebody of the 20s and the 30s to be on your team because you want to be on a winning team. So that's what the experience allows. And that was a very humbling experience in Harvard, where we saw that people who were extremely famous as professors and all of that, and they were actually humble human beings who interacted with you, they would express their doubts, self-doubts, that maybe I don't know, what do you think about it? And then you would realize that's a part of what growing up in the corporate is all about. INSEAD was, so in Siemens, for our senior executive management, we have a dedicated one-year program where we do 4 modules, and it was very, very, very fascinating. So one of the modules was managing your boss. It's very important. It's not about having the greatest idea. Can you sell that idea? Can you manage your boss to ensure that your idea gets out over there? And the second module to that was, God forbid he says yes. Now you have to implement it. Right? So if he says, yeah, great idea, why don't you go and do it? And then you're sort of looking around and finding out, oh gosh, he's just said yes to it. How do I make it happen? So it was a very, I would say, engaging kind, and we were all, from across Siemens, so we were all part of the same thing. That was my journey as a student, and I think I'm still enjoying being here. So I hope this is also my journey as a student.
So this Suman of 2016, how he is being influenced by the boy who was growing up in the family? What has been the influence of the family in setting Suman Bose of 2016?
One is I'm privileged to have a very strong mother. And if anybody from outside sees me and my mother, they'll think that these guys just hate each other. You just have to give them a gun and they'll shoot at each other. But that's our constructive love. So the more we fight, the more we love. And we disagree on everything in life. And then finally we'll find peace. But I think that was a great way of not taking any status quo. A mom is a person who doesn't take a status quo. For her, standing still means you're pretty much dead. So she pushed me out and she said, go and become a mountaineer. Think about it. And I was growing up and mom was asking me to go and become mountaineering. I'll just give an example. So I think that was, and that also gave me a sense of balance and I'm not just talking about India, across the world where gender diversity is such a big issue even today, and especially as you start hitting boardrooms, to be able to appreciate, able to bring them in, able to integrate gender diversity. I think kudos to my mother. That was number one. Number two was we were a very, I would say, political family. We had a lot of freedom fighters out of the family. So there was this sense of greater belonging. That at the end of the day, I'll give you a simple example, and this I'm speaking from my heart. So the first prayers that I've learned in my life to go in front of the Almighty and ask for was do good for everyone. Because I was told, if you do good for everyone, and if he listens to it or she listens to it, then you are a part of that everyone. So you're anyway covered. So it was a very simple nice logic which appealed to my scientific sense. And I said, oh, yeah. Instead of naming, do good for me, do good for my mother, do good for my so-and-so, do good for my, I just say good for everyone, and it sort of works. So that sort of came in from the family. And the third part of it was the value for anything. It's not just money. The value for anything was very high. We were a family who would, and I think most of us who grew in that part of the time in India, you had a hole in your socks, you just didn't throw it away. You sort of sewed it in, you wore it again. You had a shoe that opens up and you went to a cobbler. You just didn't throw it away and went and bought a new pair of shoes. So I think that sort of makes me understand, and still today, help me realize that, I've seen a lot of, I would say, urge to say, hey, it's not working, just get it out. Make a change. Sack those people or close down that factory. Well, is that the only way? I don't think so. And I think at least my learning says on the long term that it has always helped me that I take a different perspective and say, maybe it is meant to, maybe I need to take it to a cobbler and get that shoe fixed, and I can wear it again for another couple of years. So those are my values that I think my family helped me bring it up.
So most of the people who have interacted with you, that includes me, right? More than looking at the managerial or leadership style part of yours, we are very impressed with your original thinking stuff. Most of the students who went to your page and saw also your friends have commented about being original thinker. How that evolved within you? Maybe that's a good lesson for my students to understand. That instead of following some theory or principle, how did you really arrive at being an original thinker to the problems? That's a very critical question, but they would like to learn that from you.
Very philosophical question. I first of all, I think that we are all born for a purpose. And if life's journey is about finding happiness, life's journey is also for finding that purpose. Like we talked about the purpose of a company, it's also about an individual destination and purpose. And I do not believe that my thinking abilities are limited to or being constrained by what I've been told or what I've been instructed to do. There's no tax to thinking, so why shouldn't I think? Number two, I've always realized that, and as maybe some of those accidents in life that I said, nice accidents that happen to you, there's some bad accidents that happen too. We all have gone through it, but some nice accidents that happen. What helps you, they don't just come to you. So while I call them as accidents, they don't just come to you. Opportunity just doesn't come to you. You just don't get lucky. One single day, just wake up and, so for example, somebody who wins a lottery ticket. It's a very seldom, the law of average wouldn't say that she bought the first lottery ticket and he won your lottery. That never happens. So he's a habitual, so you have to be ready. You have to be ready to be lucky. So there's a lot of hard work to be lucky. You have to continuously be at it. And I realized that to be continuous to be at it, to continuous to be knocking those doors, to see which one was open, was a very diligent hard work. And the only thing that sort of allowed me to go and do it was when I untaxed my thinking. I could actually start looking at perspectives. I could start looking at, and a lot of that, in fact, most of that came in from individuals that I spoke to. An idea that they spoke about, or a point of reference that they mentioned about, it suddenly gave me a different perspective. And if I could have just walked away from that because it's sort of contrary to what I was thinking at that point of time, or I could have accepted it, or I just wandered around it and I found there was a new way of looking at it. And so I think that's what, so it's, even the original thinking I think is not really as original as you would say, but it has been able to sort of stay grounded, listen around, hear around, see around, and start building a sort of joining the dots that you see around yourself. And that's what has been my style of thinking and management.
So how do you define success? What's the meaning of success for you?
Definitely, actually it has changed. There was at one point of time where success meant getting those marks and getting into the school that I wanted. It doesn't matter anymore. There was a point of time when success meant getting the promotion or winning that new business or getting a substantial jump in salary. That I'm earning a little more than my classmate made me feel very successful. It vanished. Today, I think success, one of the parameters of success for me is when somebody walks up to me and says, you did this to me and you touched me and see how successful I am. And I have a favorite pet saying and I really mean it to many of my talented fellow colleagues who are younger colleagues, is that I would be very happy. And that's my way of giving them the best accolade. I said, I would be very happy if one day you walk up to me and say, hey, Suman, I want to hire you. I want to give you a job. I would be very happy to come in and work for you. I think if I could make that person happen that way, that one day he or she could come up to me and walk up and say, I want to give you a job and come and work for me, I think I would be very, very successful. I would feel very, very successful that day.
Maybe I'll specify the question now. Between recognition and leaving a legacy, how do you really look at success at the middle of your career?
I don't think we can plan living a legacy. And if you, can I take a minute to exemplify it? So I'm a keen student of history, and I believe the judgment of history is a judgment that goes beyond any planning that you can do. In the 1700s, or early 1800s actually, when the Renaissance was happening, the second Renaissance in France was happening in the area of art, Masonry was the biggest legacy in painting. Today, you would find only 2 paintings, small, somewhere in Musée d'Orsay of masonry for art. And somebody who was continuously being refused, that their painting was continuously being refused, and they were objected to what is called the gallery of refusers, was people like Manet, Monet, Pissarro, or writers like Emile Zola. They have lived over the last 150 years of life. So I think you can't really plan legacy. If it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Recognition to, if somebody stands up and says, I recognize you for the great work that you have done, I won't feel bad, because I think if that motivates somebody else over there and says, hey, maybe I want to be recognized too, and I want to also do some great stuff, maybe that's a great stuff to happen. But will I be hankering for recognition? I don't think so. So for me, if I can be just happy about it, what has happened around me that day, I think I feel pretty successful.
What kind of India you would like to see during your lifetime?
I want to see and I want to do it. I don't want to be a passenger in the train. As I said, we are the youngest country. We have been doing what when people come in and say, hey, this is a structure or a practice that I'm going to put in front of you and just follow that, and you take it to a path of nirvana. I don't believe in it, because the complexities of this country, for example, we in the last 20, 25 years since liberalization, 25 years, 26 years, have moved more people. India is that continent, if you can really think about it. We have moved more people than so this is the history's largest migration, and it's still going on. About close to 220 million people have already moved homes. Another 25 years, expectedly another 300 to 350 million people will move homes. For example, my ancestry is not from Gurgaon, but I live in Gurgaon, and that's a migration. We have migrated across the world, migrated in the country. The second example is the United States of America, 250 years, 250 million people. So if I start looking at impact analysis, force and impact analysis of this edifice of migration, I think our opportunity is, even sky isn't the limit, but we will have to get it. And we can get it when each one of us, with a sense of purpose, go and get it. And I'll give you a very selfish reason why you need to go and get it. And I have nothing against, don't take me as I'm jingoistic or I'm racial on it. I'm not. I'm pretty much colorblind about it. But we as a race, just like I say that to my fellow Chinese as a friends, we will stick out like a sore thumb anywhere in the world. I can carry an American passport. I can carry a British passport, but I'll stick out like an Indian, and I'll stick out like a Chinese. I'm not one of those white Caucasians who can be an American after third generation, just call myself as American. I've seen, and many of you would realize that being in the field of academics, Indian professors who were teaching, some of the seminal professors who were teaching abroad, pretty much had their classes half full in the 80s and the 90s. Today, they don't even give you an audit course. So same thing with the Chinese. That's happening because the country is happening. The diaspora is successful because the country is successful. So you and I, we will go to the grave with this identity of being an Indian. Doesn't matter whether it's the physical identity of being in the country, or identity of a passport, or identity of whether you own a home, or you own a large family, or a ranch, or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. You and I will go to the grave, or go to our funeral pyre with the identity of being an Indian. And I think we deserve it to give it to ourselves. The opportunities are all there, and I think I don't want to be. Should we be the richest nation? I don't know. Should we be doing something? If tomorrow original work comes out of the country on, for example, on treatments of certain areas of medicine, in terms of processes that can uniquely bring down slavery in the world. If we can stand in for a nation that can espouse being what recyclability is all about. It doesn't have to be, we have to have the mightiest guns, and we have to have the mightiest lots of money in our banks and trillions of dollars of foreign exchange reserve. I don't think that's what will define us as a country. What will define us as a country is that you ask me a question, whether it's recognition, whether it's a legacy. As a country, I think we can leave a legacy. It's just not for recognition. The first one is for recognition. I have so many $1 trillion in Reserve Bank's account. I have so many big guns. I have so many missiles as a recognition. For as a country, we should aspire to leave a legacy. And I think all of us can make that happen. And I want to do it. I don't want to be a passenger in that journey. Before I die, I want to at least feel happy. As I said, I should be able to tell a story to my grandchild that I was there. Maybe I wasn't successful, but I was there. I was doing stuff over there.
So let's move to the last 2-3 questions, being personal. What makes you to get a good sleep in the night, and what doesn't make you to get a good sleep in the night? What are those thoughts?
So, I have a sleep problem, actual sleep problem. So, but yeah, going over it, I think there's this sense of purpose. I do reflect at the end of the day whether I have gone in a little closer with my sense of purpose. What is my sense of purpose? Have I been able to impact somebody's life positively? Have I been able to do something that even one person would turn up and say, this worked for me? That's a little, in the day of work, we have multiple such opportunities. Opportunities to do something for an employee, opportunities to do something for a customer, opportunities to do something for the society at large. Today, for example, I'm sure I'll have a great sleep. I don't know whether you'll like what I've said, but I think I feel good about being here. What doesn't give me a good sleep is, I think I worry a little too much. It's not the kind of worry that the world is coming to an end, but I do believe I'm personally and I would say professionally, I'm very touched with, in a wrong way, I'm rubbed rather, not touched, very rubbed at this point of time with the kind of divisions that we are seeing this world is coming into. I feel scared because I feel we are building smaller homes with bigger walls, and very soon we will be living in our own cells and prisons of families, of countries, of individuals, and I'm very worried. I think this world has, the last 200, 250 years of globalization that has happened, humanization that has happened. The world is possibly, despite all the bad news that you read in the newspapers, the world is possibly, historically, and as a very keen student of history, the world is at its most peaceful state. The abundance is in front of us, and I fear that we will lose it because of the short-sightedness that's happening. And I see that every day. Unfortunately, I can't talk about it more, but I see that in the decisions that we take as corporations, in the decisions that we're taking as countries, as families, and I'm extremely scared because I do believe that that's not the world that at least I would want to die in. I would want to die in a much more free and intellectually open world.
Final question. As you grow up in your career, you make mistakes, you make right decisions, you make wrong decisions. When these kids are starting their journey today, what are those 5 things that you will advise them which you have learned from your mistakes?
Don't take yourself very seriously. There will always be a second day. Make mistakes, move on. Own up, put your hands up, don't hide it. Own up and say, yeah, I screwed up, and move on. If your organization, if your boss doesn't see the value in what you did, maybe it's time for you to find a new organization and a new boss. But don't get hung up, don't get hurt up. The world is not going to come to an end. So move on. The second one is about integrity. You have to live the life that you want somebody to live for you. If you expect something from somebody, ensure that you give that person or that organization or that setup, society, the same thing that you expect. If you expect good behavior, behave well. Your personal mood swings are not reasons for giving somebody a bad time. Your personal positions of strength at that point of time doesn't give you a right to hurt somebody. So that integrity of being who you are and giving back what you expect in return is a very, very important edifice. Third would be, don't tether yourself with imaginary tethers. Tethers of, oh, I have my family here. Oh, I'm a vegetarian. If I do this, I can't eat my vegetarian food. We have tons of imaginary tethers, and I'm intentionally saying things which sounds very frivolous, but they're not, believe me. And you will have important. How can I move on? I'm from Delhi. How can I go and live in Chennai? How can I live in Philippines, for example? I have lived across the world. I've actually lived in over 20 countries. I've worked across 4 continents. I've managed people across continents. Despite all that you can say, oh, the Australians are like this, etc. People are people. At the end of the day, you will touch them or you won't touch them. If you touch them, they'll do anything for you. If you don't touch them, they can be Indians and they won't work for you. So just don't get yourself tethered, especially at this age that you are in. Life will give you, there's a saying, right? When life gives you lemons, make a lemonade out of it. Don't trip over it, make a lemonade out of it. But don't get yourself tethered into things and say, oh, this is my shortcoming. Just be as free as you can. Last but not the least, I think this is the fourth, actually the fifth. The fourth one would be respect for yourself, respect for individual. It's a little bit of the integrity thing, but the respect is a very deep word. And it's not just about what you formally put in front of the person. You have to be respectful. And that has to come from within. It cannot be an act that you put on. It has to come from within. And that doesn't mean that you cannot say no to somebody. Being respectful doesn't mean you always say yes. You can easily say no to certain things, but be respectful. And final is, I actually said it as a part of the conundrum, is you don't have to always say yes. You can say no. And you can pretty much, and say no without a guilt. If that demands you to, if there are unreasonable demands on your time, if there are unreasonable demands on your ethics, if there are unreasonable demands on whatever, if you have to say no, don't feel guilty about it. Say no. But with a lot of respect, say no. As we have a problem, as a society, we have a problem of saying yes, and then we're sort of trying to figure out. Then we hide. We won't take the person's phone call because he's expecting. He's expecting or she's expecting. Your friend, a great friend, you're supposed to have submissions in your class, and your great friend calls up and says, let's go and watch a movie. What do? Take a call. But if you have to say no to either one, if you say, yeah, I'm going to go and watch a movie and then I'll do a late night and I'll do my submissions for the session, go and do it. But if you have to say no, don't say no, but say no. I've seen a lot of persons struggle all their life because they feel so guilty about saying no. And they always are supposed to be saying, they're tuned to say yes always at all point of time, especially to positions of authority. Positions that are your teachers, positions that are your bosses, your managers, your elders in the family. Be respectful, but you can always say no. That's my 5 things.
Thank you, Suman. Let's give a big hand. We got a chance to see the leader, we got a chance to see the human being, we got a chance to see the philosopher. We also got a chance to see the futurist, that we're looking into the future part of it. Thank you so much for finding time and interacting with students. Many times when you ask your people to come and give a talk, these are the parts which you miss it. So that's why we thought that a conversation is a better model after the talk to get more ideas about the lessons of life. Thank you, Suman, for this part. I'll request Soil to come and present a small memento from our side to Mr. Suman Bose, please. Oh.
Great time. And this, you're not going to get this time together, so just enjoy your time on the campus.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.